And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition, the final edition of Sports Talk 1240. And today is December 27th, 2020. We're finally almost out of this year. And Christmas is in the rearview mirror now. Who would have thought? It seems like this month completely flew by. Obviously, the year didn't, but thank God we're done with it. We've got a lot to get into tonight. Like I said, this is the final edition of Sports Talk 1240, as we will be rebranding the show in the new year. Come next January 3rd, it'll be known and relaunched with Bill Donahue kicking things off at 8 o'clock. It'll be relaunched as Sports Talk New York. So we can't wait. We have a whole bunch of fun guests next week. Um, Bill is going to have Curtis Martin and Daryl Strawberry and Dr. J. He's got a lot. I have former Giant tight end Mark Bavaro lined up. So we got a lot of fun things coming down the pike next week. So please tune in because it's going to really be great. Um, I think that it's going to be, it's going to be a breath of fresh air for everybody that's listened to this, the show of the years. This show's been on the air since 2007, believe it or not. And, we have so many interviews, so many, you know, so much history with this, and at WGBB itself. So you could check us out. Go on WGBB Sports Talk on Twitter. Check us out, WGBB Radio on Twitter as well. You can also check us out, WGBB Sports Talk on Facebook. Give us a like over there as well. So we'll be getting all that straightened out. You can still check us out at sportstalk1240.com as well. Check out all of our old shows, any old interviews, all the hosts, anything else you can imagine. You can take that to the bank because we have all your information right here. But let's get down to business right now because that's what we're here to do is talk some sports and a lot of things going on in the sports world today, especially in New York as the suddenly red hot at the worst possible time New York Jets defeated the Cleveland Browns today by a score of 23-16. This is the type of thing that you would have much rather seen in September and October. But a lot of good things. Sam Darnold looked pretty good today. 16-32, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't turn the ball over. You also mixed in just a wacky career day for Jamison Crowder, who went out there and really did a great job. He completed a 43-yard touchdown pass to Braxton Berrios down the sideline. He also had 92 receiving yards and a touchdown himself, 7 catches. Just a big day for Crowder all around, who has, of all the free agents that the Jets went out and signed a few years ago, whether it was Le'Veon Bell, um, and any of those big names that they went out and got, this guy, Jamison Crowder, has worked out by far the best, and that's including just everybody else. I mean, really, if you think about it, he's probably the best move they've made since they drafted Jamal Adams, who and obviously he talked his way out of town. He's up in Seattle right now, but realistically, Jamison Crowder is one of the bright spots of a very very dark season. Also, you have to give a little bit of a heads up to Chris Herndon, who did have 4 catches for 34 yards and a touchdown today. That's nothing that's going to blow you away. But, this is a guy who could barely get on the field early in his career. He couldn't hold on to the ball. And so for him to be looking like a decent threat is quite a turnaround because earlier in the year it seemed like we were going to be having, it looked like we were going to be having him getting cut, before week 10 early this season. But luckily that hasn't been the case. Luckily he's turned things around. But you know what? Look, and I know I'm sitting here at the end of 2020 breaking down a Jet win. And I know a lot of you are probably sitting there scratching your heads and saying, listen, if this happened 2 months ago, maybe I'd give a crap. But right now, I don't care that the Jets won back-to-back games. As a matter of fact, it's probably a bad thing that they won both games. It's definitely a bad thing because the Jets were cruising along at 0-13, looking like they were the team that was going to land Trevor Lawrence. This is a kid that's been called a generational talent at quarterback. Now, while that word generational may be thrown around too much these days, man, Trevor Lawrence is a hell of a talent. If you had a couple of minutes to sit down a week or two ago when they played Notre Dame in the ACC championship game, Trevor Lawrence was the difference maker in that game. And when you saw what Notre Dame did to, uh, you know, Clemson the first time they played each other, where Notre Dame took that game in one of the craziest overtime games you're going to see in college football. Uh, Trevor Lawrence completely changed things. There wasn't a time where, I mean, even though they put up 40 plus points in that game too, there wasn't a time where you could just sit back and breathe because you know Trevor Lawrence was putting pressure on them with his legs, putting pressure on them with his arm, just doing all the right stuff that you need to do. And Notre Dame's a pretty good team, but I mean, I think anybody that knows anything about college football figured that as soon as Lawrence got back there behind center, that it was going to be a very tall task for the Fighting Irish. And, you know, in retrospect, it looked like it was going to be something that the Jets could hang their hat on and say, hey, listen, we might be having a really bad season right now, but look what this kid's doing right now at the biggest moments in college football. In a few months, he could be wearing our jersey. He could be playing behind our center. He could be leading our team to fourth quarter comebacks and all these big moments that you envision when you draft a potential franchise quarterback. But unfortunately, that does not seem like that's going to be the case as the Jets went out today. And I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm not the type of guy to root against my team. Even when it probably is the right thing to do. When the Jets blew that game against the Raiders a few weeks ago, I was very angry. I was not happy. I did not want to be another one of these teams that went 0-16. I didn't want to be like the '08 Lions or the 17 Browns. I didn't want to be in that class with that stink and have that 0-16 awfulness, even if it did net me a Trevor Lawrence all over me. I didn't want to deal with that. But you know what? Maybe I was wrong. And it really didn't matter what I wanted anyway. It matters what plays out on the field. So I thought I was going to be seeing an 0-16 team anyway. But last week the Jets went out and in stunning fashion beat the LA Rams 23-20. They were a big time favorite going on the West Coast. The Rams the Jets were a big time underdog. Um, no one really gave them a chance, but the Jets went out there and just built themselves a big lead, and it proved to be insurmountable. As even though they still tried to do some Jet things in the end and give that game back to LA, they managed to hold on to it at the end, surprisingly, and got their first win of the year, ended a franchise record 13-game losing streak, started 0-13 for the first time in team history. Previously, the high that they were was 0-8, which was 1996. They did five better than that this year, unfortunately. And like I said too, you could sit back and have said if they had gone 0-16 and got the first overall pick, that you know what, as much as it stinks, they still got Trevor Lawrence out of it. Well, there's not even a chance of that. I thought people were overreacting last week because it's even though they won, they were still tied with Jacksonville. Yes, Jacksonville did have the tiebreaker. So if the season ended last week, at the end of the completion of last week, then the Jets wouldn't have had number one. They would have been number two. But the fact was the season didn't end last week, and there still was a chance that if the Jets lost you know, their final two games, and if Jacksonville just happened to win one of them, that they were gonna that the Jets are still gonna get the number one pick anyway, because they'd be 1-15, and Jacksonville would be 2-14. So the Jets still would have been able to get it. They still would have been able to make it work. And even though they might have hurt their chances a little bit, they still got that win, that feel good moment this year, and still ended up with the number one pick anyway. Well, with the win today, that went out the window because Jacksonville had a big game against a big game for the Jets' purposes. They had a big game against the Chicago Bears today, and while they were up 3-0 early, they were down 10-3. They came back, made it 10-10. After that, the game went out the window. 10-10 soon became 20-10, which then became 40-10, and it just kept getting worse from there. So a big blowout, pretty much secured the number one pick. Actually, it did 100% secure the number one pick for Jacksonville today. The loss today, combined with the Jets' win, clinched it because even if Jacksonville went out and won next week, and the Jets went out and lost next week, and both teams finished 2-14, Jacksonville has played the weaker schedule, which I can't. I mean, when you look at how bad the Jets have been this year, they should win every tiebreaker. But because the Jets have technically played a harder schedule, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have played the easier schedule, meaning that they still had the same record against the Jets but against worse teams, um, then Jacksonville secured that number one spot for themselves. So that does stink. You'd like to have seen the Jets be able to bring in Trevor Lawrence here and get a talent like that. Kind of it all kind of seemed like it was falling into place for New York sports as we have had such a weird 2020. Obviously with both football teams playing poorly, the Giants kind of gave you a little reason for hope for a little while. They still kind of have it, but with the loss today, it's kind of looking like things are going back to normal for the Giants, and it's just about midnight, and they're turning back into the pumpkin instead of they're a playoff pretender as opposed to a playoff contender. So who knows? It looks like that division could be won by Dallas, but with the amount of terribleness that we've seen from New York sports, the Mets had a terrible year this year. The Yankees had a very disappointing finish. Really, the only positive thing that happened this year from a team result prospect is the Islanders going all the way to Game 6 of the conference finals. So the Islanders going on that run, really, aside from the Yankees making the playoffs, which people, that's to be expected if you're a Yankee fan. I guess it was kind of a surprise that the Rangers made the playoffs too, so you got to tip your cap to them a little bit. But the way they went out, although it did net them Alexis Lafreniere, so that's another thing we're going to be getting into in just a few minutes too, is the anticipated restart of hockey as the Rangers and Islanders are opening up against each other in a little while. That's January 14th and 16th. So we'll get into that after the break. But just to finish up with the football, um, you know, when you really sit here and look what the Jets did to themselves, it doesn't. I'm not the type of person to sit here and root against my team, but both of those wins, especially the one today, really hurt the Jets' chance for growth. Now, when you still look at everything, now you can say that the possibility of Sam Bradford, I was going to call him. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that that's not the case of what he is. But Sam Darnold, um, when you look at what Sam Darnold has shown, and I've heard from scouts around the league this year, Sam Darnold has looked awful at times, but he's also showed those flashes of brilliance at times, where you say to yourself, this kid might, he's 23 years old. He might not have figured it all out yet, but there still is a chance that he can put it all together and be a very valuable quarterback, a very valuable piece at the NFL level. You got to remember, he came in the league when he was 20 years old, maybe not even 21 yet. I'm pretty sure when he got drafted, he was 20. And this is a kid who'd only been playing quarterback for a couple of years at that point. I think since his sophomore year in high school. So, this is a kid that really didn't have much experience at the position, who excelled at USC in college, who a lot of people have given up on. And hey, look, I'm not going to be the person to tell you that if the Jets didn't have the number one overall pick, I wouldn't be taking Trevor Lawrence right now and ditching Sam Darnold. And maybe for the long term health of this franchise, that's the correct move. But that might not. It's definitely not an option anymore, unless you are working out a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars to acquire that number one overall pick, which would cost you an arm and a leg, or the Jaguars, for some godforsaken reason, pass on Trevor Lawrence as their future quarterback, which, you know, that's not going to happen. Just like the Rangers with Lafreniere, everybody knew who they were going to take. The second that the Jets lost today and it was clinched, Jacksonville was taking the number one pick next year, every single person on the planet that knows football knows who they're taking, and that's Clemson's Trevor Lawrence. So the now the Jets, they have a lot to think about. They have a lot to figure out in front of them. I mean, it looks like a couple of the pieces that they have this year really turned out to be good. I mean, Mekhi Beckham looks like a piece at left tackle. It looks like Quinnen Williams from last year's draft is really turning into a big time player. 7 sacks this year. He's probably going to miss he missed today and he will miss next week because of concussion problems. So he's probably going to just sit out the rest of the year. But he's really turned around and turned himself into an impact player. They got Denzel Mims out there, the cornerback Bryce Hall. So there are starting to be flashes of pieces that you could say, okay, maybe the Jets can keep this guy and make him part of the foundation of this team going forward. And the Jets do have a lot of draft capital. I mean, if you look at it right now, they're going to have the number 2 pick in the draft, unfortunately, but that's the reality of the situation. They're going to have the number 2 pick. They're going to have probably a late 20s pick. I mean, unless Seattle just falls apart in the playoffs and gets knocked out in the first round. Maybe it'll be in the early part of the 20s, but very doubtful it'll be in the teens, especially with what a good team that Seattle is. So they're going to have a late round pick there. They're going to have a pick in the second round. They're going to have 2 picks in the third round. They're going to have 2 first round picks next year. So the Jets do have a lot to build around now. Who knows? Maybe they go after, this is supposedly one of the deepest wide receiver classes that they've seen in a while, especially on the top end. So maybe the Jets grab one of those receivers. Maybe they grab a big time offensive line piece, which is definitely a possibility. Maybe they go out and draft. I know people, especially in the later part of the first round, are talking about Travis Etienne, um, who is um, Clemson's running back for Trevor Lawrence's running back over there, who's one of the top running backs on the board. So maybe the Jets will pick him up, and start pairing him back there with Michael Perrine because we know that Frank Gore is near the end, and Frank Gore will not be here next year. So the Jets just got to start looking forward, and the main thing right now, obviously next week you got to play the New England Patriots, so you're gonna get that game out of the way. You're gonna finish that up. Put this season behind you, as terrible as this season has been, and just got to keep your fingers crossed and hope that that things just start to fall into place. You got to hope you get your hands on a head coach, because we know that the second that in that game against the Patriots, the clock goes to all zeros, even before the draft, the next thing on the docket is finding out who the head coach of this team is, because it's not going to be Adam Gase going forward. And I really hope that it's not Christopher Johnson making the calls either, who is the brother of Woody Johnson, who's the Jets owner, who's currently an ambassador over in the UK for the United States. So, hopefully Woody comes back on over the pond, takes back the reins from his younger brother Christopher. And, not that Woody Johnson was the best at making all the calls the first time, but let's just hope that Woody, you know, puts the right people in the position, because I think right now Joe Douglas is pretty good in his spot. We're seeing a bunch of his picks are looking pretty decent. We just got to hope that Joe Douglas goes out there and keeps doing it. He's got, like I said before, he's got a lot of draft capital. You've got a lot of pieces on the board to turn this thing around, to get bodies, and not just any kind of bodies that will produce, bodies that will go out there and do what they're told, and execute on the football field, which we haven't had for the Jets in quite some time on a consistent level, at least. So you just got to be really happy with the prospects looking forward, because the second that, as they call it, Black Monday, the day after the season ends in football. So Sunday we go into Black Monday, and where all the coaches get fired that day. As long as Adam Gase's name is on that list, and I heard Joe Douglas scaring Jet fans about 4 to 6 weeks ago, saying that Adam Gase is part of the solution for this team going forward. I'm just gonna really, really hope that he was just backing up the guy he's got in the seat right now, and that he by no means believes that. Because if he believes that, then Jet fans were in trouble, and unfortunately, that's the case. So, what's it called? With that, I'm gonna just finish up here with the Giants before we take our first break. As spent a lot of time talking with the disappointment with the Jets, a lot of disappointment with the Giants as well, as they went against the Ravens today. The Giants were 5-9, the Ravens were 9-5, and it looked like it today, as the Ravens easily handled the Giants 27-13. Um, it hurt the Giants in the fact that they really had the division in their hands if they could win that game. Um, because when you look at it now, right now Washington and the Cowboys are tied for first place, both at 6-9. The Eagles are 4-10-1, and the Giants are 5-10. So the Eagles pretty much cemented themselves last place. Well, I mean, unless the Giants lose next week too. But if right now there's a big chance that this division could end in a three-way tie with the Redskins, or actually, I'm sorry, the Washington football team, the Dallas Cowboys, and the New York Giants. So if the Giants win next week and the other two teams lose, they'll all end at 6-10. So then it would come down to different tiebreakers. And right now, it looks like the Cowboys would get those tiebreakers because the Cowboys have the better conference record. So the Giants could have helped themselves there and at least tied it with the Cowboys. But yeah, it didn't. That wasn't going to be the case. As right now, who'd have thought? With all the turmoil that the Cowboys faced early in this season, who would have thought that there's a possibility that they could sneak in and win this division? Um, it's really crazy, and it all comes down. Well, actually, there's no way it's going to end in a three-way tie, because the Giants season ends next week against the Cowboys. So that's pretty much for the division. If the Giants win that game, they give themselves a shot. If the Cowboys win that game, they will win the division at 7-9. Um, so very, very, very interesting you when you look at how this Giant season broke down. And you know what, Giant fans, you just got to be happy. And I don't mean to say that where you should be happy that this team could potentially go 6-10, maybe 5-11 this year. But you should be happy that this team took a lot of strides forward. They really look like a much better coached team. It looks like they have, a lot of talent, and they went on most of this run without Saquon Barkley. Um, if you come back next season with a healthy Saquon, an improved offensive line, the defense, two of the biggest signings, in my opinion, for and I've been banging this drum all year, for Dave Gettleman. Two of the biggest signings he's had is middle linebacker Blake Martinez and cornerback James Bradbury. Martinez, the former Packer, who's come in and has been a complete pro for the Giants. I know he's been banged up the last couple of weeks, but he's been a difference maker all season. And James Bradbury's played on an all pro level for most of the season. I think he's kind of come back down to earth the last week or two, but for the most part, Bradbury has been one of the more underrated signings in the offseason for the entire league. So you really got to tip your cap to Gettleman there. I think with this season and this run, I think Gettleman has saved himself. Um, because a lot of people when they were 1-7, I think a lot of people were considering Dave Gettleman to be a dead man walking, to be an Adam Gase, an Adam Gase type, or Brody Van Wagenen when the Steve Cohen deal went through. So I think a lot of people were kind of expecting that with Gettleman, but don't be surprised if Gettleman hangs around because his fingerprints were all around the improvements seen this year. And while they were not seen immediately, when you look back, especially a lot of those early games after that 1-7 start, you could really see that the improvement was there. You remember they almost took the game where Dak Prescott got hurt. The Giants took the Dallas Cowboys right down to the wire and ended up losing that game late. The same with the against Brady and the Buccaneers, who the Buccaneers just went out and hammered the other day, just completely owning. Dropping 40 plus points. Brady and the Buccaneers look primed for a playoff run now. Wouldn't surprise me to see them in a championship game this year. Couldn't believe that the Buccaneers hadn't made the playoffs since 2007, but that drought will end this year as Tom Brady goes down there with the Midas touch. And right now the main thing you have to remember for the Giants is that this is a year of growth. It's Joe Judge's first year. He improved your record one way or the other. If you end 6-10 this year, that's a pretty good improvement in my opinion for a young quarterback, especially like I said with Saquon out. So you have to say they took a step in the right direction, and I like what I'm seeing. And they're going to have another decently high draft pick, and we'll stick with that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our first break of the day. Thanks for sticking around here. We're going to get into more in the second half of the show, and I'll catch you on the other side.